Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Global Hack Week January 2023. Today, we're going to go over intro to cybersecurity concepts. So I dropped the check-in link in chat. Also, if I just got a confirmation that you can hear me, that would be amazing. Okay, cool. Let's see. So first things first, let's throw this back on the screen. There we go. Okay, so cool. So today it's pretty casual of a thing. I will take questions from chat and we can stray away from our topics of conversation. But I've outlined some basics into cybersecurity, and that's what we're really going to be over. So first things first, some really basic introductions. So I am Kev. I'm a coach at Major League Hacking. I use the he, him, his pronouns, and I do a lot of different things. So if we're talking about a lot of it, I do cybersecurity exercises, competitions. I do infrastructure engineering, a bit of here and there. Mix a lot of things, UX, UI design, just a bunch of different things. So I'm always happy to talk about really anything. Thank you for checking in, and hello, welcome. But yeah, so feel free to interrupt me at any time. It's meant to be a discussion, more like a session where we'll dive into a few cool events, a few cool concepts. It's a pretty well organized slide deck, but we'll definitely take sidetracks. Welcome. Hello. Welcome to the stream. So a really quick schedule overview. Hello. We're going to do an introduction to cybersecurity. So basically what a lot of big companies define as cybersecurity. I picked one of the biggest company you can find. So if you look up cybersecurity and you just look up like what is cybersecurity, there's a lot of companies that are pretty big and well known who work in either the technology field, are a huge massive technology. What I'm trying to say, like a huge, massive technology dominated company, or they are people working on networks and network security. How to get started in cybersecurity? It's really be curious and really just have a passion and interest. And there's a lot of places to start. This is actually off of some notes I've actually taken from a really introduction to an entry level to cybersecurity course at a university level. So there's a lot of good content in here, as well as some stuff we can just discuss and move along with. I agree. I love the cybersecurity space. It's always a space that's pretty intimidating, but it's definitely not hard to get into. AI and machine learning is less of my thing. I've done a bit of AI and machine learning, not really my cup of tea, but I can get why it's pretty cool. Also, hey Wei, how's it going? It's a great field, and there's so many. It's such a broad field. There's so much you can do with it. It's actually insane. What you can do. There is planning on it, not this time, but I might put together this is not a promise. For one global hack week, it is in the plans that whenever I am available and free, we might try to do a CTF for the whole global hack week and run it. But this is not a promise. It's a drawing board idea, and we'll see how close it comes to fruition from there. But yeah, not a promise. Okay, cool. So so we're going to talk about a bit of ethics into cybersecurity, as well as cybersecurity standards, requirement, and principles. Some of the really key ones, as well as personal security and what it means for you. Yeah. CTF is probably the furthest we can really go. I was thinking of maybe doing a like red team, blue team exercise. Issue with that is we get into a lot of like liability grounds, and yeah, I'm not being held liable. Don't do crime. But yeah. So a few things first. Let's get this going. Let me split this. I can see chat, and I'm gonna put this here. Okay, cool. So what is cybersecurity is the first question. So here are some definition. I've taken like keys of those definitions and paraphrase some of them from one of our biggest tech companies that we have. So for Microsoft, they define cybersecurity is a set of processes, best practices, and technology solutions that help protect your critical systems and network from digital attacks. That's from Microsoft. We have from IBM, cybersecurity is the practice of protecting critical systems and sensitive information from digital attacks, right? So it's really key things you can see there. It's like critical systems, digital attacks, sensitive information, keywords that they have. No, it cannot you gotta catch it next time. I'm just kidding. Maybe later. And then a successful cybersecurity approach has multiple layers of protection spread across the computer networks, programs, or data that one intends to keep safe. In an organization, the people, processes, and the technology must all complement one another to create an effective defense from cyber attacks. Cisco has one of the longest definition of it, which not surprising because Cisco is a networking company. So it is really in the ballhouse of what they're really essential in the cybersecurity realm, right? Cool. So I would think cybersecurity is such a broad terminology that you can really define it however it really suits you, right? So, like, for example, I've mentioned personal cybersecurity. We have like cybersecurity of buildings, right? So, for example, let's say your school. Your school has so much electronics in it. You have cybersecurity is not solely most of the time digital attacks nowadays. We also really speak up behind cyber physical security, right? Because most of our technology nowadays have some sort of smart layer or intelligent layer built into them. This includes like smart grids, right? What like the grids that power your whole house are no longer just electric grids that has no communication pathways, that has no like ways of keeping track of metrics and statistics. They are generally all been smartified, added technology, added logic, adding computing boards to them, and logic boards that they are essentially part of your network. So cybersecurity, I think, has really outgrown of just general the digital space. It is now really most of the time cyber physical facility. We have like automation and manufacturing, right? We have conveyor about that. Like, I don't know if you guys know this. There's actually some manufacturing. It's been automated to the degree where, let's say, I'm a client. I go to a website. I place an order. I hit purchase. Right. What happens after I hit purchase is that just sends it to a smart factory where a robot will then start a conveyor belt and assemble what I purchase. And then there could be like robot arms on it. There's so much sensors. Like there's IR sensors. There is a component sensor, there's quantity measurement, there's depth sensors, and they can build things from order. There are some things that have been automated to the point where a customer can place an order, it hits a factory, that's a super automated manufacturing facility that would have automated processes that just build everything. There's actually model labs for this type of stuff, and then they would produce it, and it just goes to a shipping process, and then kind of gets shipped out. But it's like all that is done through a lot of code and smart and networking and a lot of systems being intertwined. So we're talking a lot about cyber physical securities nowadays, and not even just cybersecurity. But cybersecurity is such a broad field. Like, for example, we have cyber physical security, we have reverse engineering, we have social engineering, and we're going to go over some of that actually right now. So some of the things we're going to talk about is common cyber threat. I have compiled a bunch of these that we're going to discuss over. Also, again, I really like to take key definition of these terms from huge companies and see how they define those. So ask questions in chat. But we'll go over how I would define them and what my experience and what I've seen with them, as well as what some of the biggest companies say about these cyber threats. So the common cyber threats are malware, ransomware, phishing and social engineering, insider threat, distributed denial of service, or also known as DDoS, or I guess it's just DDoS attacks. What a advanced persistent threat is, or APT, as well as what a man-in-the-middle attack is. So let's look at our first category, and we have our first contender. These are actually from really just two companies who had a really actually in-depth article on cybersecurity. Pretty good reads. If you're interested in them, you can just look it up. Just look at what is cybersecurity or cybersecurity IBM. Yeah, because cybersecurity is such a broad field. There's actually a lot of good read on it, right? So malware, according to IBM, is the term malware refers to a malicious software variant such as worm, viruses, Trojan, and spyware that provides unauthorized access or causes damage to a computer. Malware attacks are increasingly fireless and designed to get around familiar detection methods such as antivirus tools that scan for malicious attachment, right? One of the key things here to know, or actually, it's one of the things that I was really confused with, is like you always hear the term malware, and then you have things such as like worms, viruses, right, and like Trojan, spyware. This is not like bacteria and viruses are different. So malware is your biggest, broadest category in terms of a attack on your a malicious software, right? So malicious software is known as malware. So this includes things like Trojan spyware, viruses, and worms, and it's a pretty important concept because you also have things in that category such as like keyloggers and reverse shells and like bind shells, right? Those are all type of different malware techniques. So malware is legitimately any type of malicious software or malicious code that is supposed to access the system that they're not authorized to have access in, or it causes damage or steals information. Those are some of the stuff it does, right? That is IBM's definition. So we also have Microsoft, also another huge entity in technology, right? So they say malware is a catch-all term for any malicious software, including worms, ransomware, spyware, and viruses. It is designed to cause harm to computers or networks by alternating or deleting files, extracting sensitive data like passwords and account numbers, or sending malicious email or traffic. Malware may be installed by an attacker who gain access to the network, but often individuals unwillingly deploy malware on their devices or company network after clicking a bad link with downloading an infected attachment. The key thing here is knowing that malware is essentially any malicious code and that it can come in any form, right? So if you did not know that things like even a PDF file or a Microsoft Word document, those all can contain malware, is why that if you generally, like, let's say, download a file from, let's say, Google Drive, where your Google Chrome might scan those files to look for a common thing, what it's looking for is common pattern of code that generally indicate it's doing something malicious that shouldn't be doing. Our next category is ransomware, which is a type of malware, but these are actually really important because there's been a lot of actual ransomware attacks, and these have real world impacts, right? So a malware might, let's say, take down your computer or like steal some information from one individual or multiple individual. They're so real world, but like ransomware has a whole nother effect. Ransomware is a type of malware that locks down files, data, or systems and threaten to erase or destroy the data or make private any or sensitive data to the public. So you can make private or public that sensitive data. Using a ransom is paid to, unless a ransom is paid to cyber criminal who launched the attack. Recent ransomware attacks have targeted state and local government, which are easier to breach than organizations under pressure to pay ransoms in order to restore application websites on which citizen relies, right? So a really big example is if you live in the United States, there was a ransomware attack on the Colonial Pipeline, and that caused huge problems, right? My PC got infected with ransomware. All my files are encrypted. That's really actually interesting because ransomware actors generally don't target. It's real rare that they don't target individuals because the stakes isn't high enough. I would love to know what actually happened. How'd you handle it? Did you end up a backup system you can just start from, or what was your handling? But ransomware is a pretty big real world problem, right? So ransomware is a type of malware, and we have seen it with real world effect where it shut down the Colonial Pipeline that provides gas, a method of fuel for, I think, I forgot if it was just the whole East Coast in the U.S. or further than that, but that caused gas prices to skyrocket, right? And we have seen ransomware attacks on school system because education system is notoriously known to have lower spending budget in terms of cybersecurity. Because as we're slowly moving to the digital age, education is one of those realms where we don't think about security as we even do things. And this actually really applies in actual physical systems too, as well as like hospitals, right? If you do not know, some medical equipment run on the oldest pieces of equipment, like firmware or software possible. There's medical equipment running on like Windows XP or 2007 because they're so like specialized and specific. The person whoever wrote the software for those, they don't write new ones. They don't like push out update for Windows 10 so you can use that. So their hardware is so expensive they can't just replace them, and their software is never updated because that's the software that ships with this hardware, and it doesn't work with anything else. So I don't know if you ever notice, if you go to your doctor's office, it's one of the most fun things I like to do is like in the doctor office. I've seen doctor's office run on like Windows 7, and that's what pulls up their like patient information chart. And this becomes a problem when hospital complexes have these cyber physical systems, where it's this physical system and hardware in their building that can help attacker maybe compromise the whole entire network. And if they lock things down, it's super bad in terms of like keeping people alive, right? There's you've seen this in show as well. It doesn't generally end as well as the shows, right? You've seen like in like a police show or like some sort of like cyber criminal show where like they actually like boot up the system in time. Those are generally pretty rare to have all that. Hi 404 and no CTF, not now. One day, considering. But it's a lot of work. But it's on the drawing board. One global hack week, I will probably do a CTF if they allow me to. I also have to see if they'll allow me to. But yes. And thanks for stopping by 404. Okay, so one time with the API manipulation, I was able to edit order prices in one of the restaurant's order management system and able to change prices to $1. I reported it and got rewarded. Yes, so that's known as bounty, right? So it's called bounty bug hunting or bounty hunting. It's like there's some places where you have system where they put out like, hey, if you do something and come, we're actually going to talk about this in our ethics portion about how to approach something like that. But there are systems where they might be like, hey, I want you to try to find a bug. If you do, you tell us about it and you don't actually do harm with it, right? So like we'll go over terms like red hat, black hat, and like gray hat. But yeah, that's actually a really cool example. And like this is actually really another really good example is like restaurant industries, right? I don't know if you've seen, I've been to restaurants where like their order management system, whether their POS or purchasing order system, or I think that's what it stands for, but like where their purchasing order system is legitimately a terminal. I don't know if you've seen those. Those crack me up because like I'm looking like I'm staring at my Windows terminal. It's so old. It's legit like you press button like numbers and like you hit enter and like you type. It's some of them are complete terminal based operating system as advanced a lot. And the biggest thing is cybersecurity, unfortunately, most time it's an afterthought, which opens a lot of these systems to attack, right? We've seen these a lot with like IoT devices, right? Cybersecurity is never the first thought, what the thing they think about initially. It's generally, I produce a system, it's great, it's functional, and then cybersecurity researcher or analyst comes along afterwards and be like, hey, I don't think this is safe. Okay, we're gonna look at really quick another definition from Microsoft, which is ransomware is a form of extortion that uses malware to encrypt files, making them inaccessible. Attackers often extract data during a ransomware attack and may threaten to publish it if they don't receive payment. In exchange for a decryption key, victims must pay a ransom, typically in cryptocurrencies. Not all decryption key work, and so payment does not guarantee that files recover. I think this is actually a really good point from Microsoft that I really like, is why I add multiple definitions about it, right? So each of these companies really sometimes pull out different focuses and different major points. So the key thing is this highlights a lot why a lot of companies and even education school systems are putting a lot more money into their cyber department, especially doing backups, right? It's having a way to recover from these really quickly, especially if the data isn't as sensitive, right? Because sometimes it's like it's not a fair trade, right? It's not like they're handing you the keys to the lock, and you get it tested the same time as you're paying the money. So you're most of the time, we're going to touch about crypto here, but essentially most of the time they ask the money in crypto because it's really harder to trace. It's not fully untraceable if you know what you're doing, but it's a harder to trace currency, and it's a lot easier to move around and it's anomalous. I cannot say that word. But yeah, if you don't know, that's like one of the biggest advantages crypto is it's not a centralized form of currency, and they generally ask ransom payments in cryptocurrency for that exact reason. And you just send them money and you're hoping that they actually hold up to the end of the promise. They can just disappear. They can actually give you a key that doesn't work. They can give you a key because remember, when they write this stuff, it's easier to cause damage than it is to recover from damage, right? So sometimes they write these software because they can put, let's say, the ransomware on your system, and they can, and as long as your systems don't detect it because you have really poor cybersecurity, let's say, they can take like a year, even if it's like that badly written, right? Because ransomware is end of the day malware, which is just malicious code. Take a year to encrypt everything, and you get hit a year later, right? But like the decryption could be garbage in terms of, because encrypting and decrypting is efficiency matters, and it's really based off of the code that it's encrypted with or decrypted with. And sometimes you have cases where they send in the money and you get nowhere because of that. So another thing we talk about is phishing and social engineering. I think I'm gonna stop reading exactly word for word from the slides, but can I ask, do you go to a public school system? Because that's pretty common nowadays. Really key targets. Oh, real quick, ransomware. Key targets are generally not your individual. They target generally big public things because of the urgency level. There's higher chance they'll get paid for it. Like if I ransom 404 or I ransom anyone in this chat, right? The amount of money I can get out of you is so little, it's generally not worth it. Yeah. Public systems are pretty well known for having weaker security because you're using taxpayer money generally, or some sort of publicly funded universities. So it's pretty poor. So phishing and social engineering. So this is generally has a lot to do with collecting information and being good at this. Like anyone can be a social engineer. Can be good at it. You don't even have to have good technical skill. It's really about how you carry yourself, your demeanor and stuff, right? So phishing is a form of social engineering that tricks users into providing their own personal identifiable information, or PII, or sensitive information. In phishing scams, text or scams, emails, or text messages appears to be from a legitimate company asking for sensitive information, such as credit card data or log information. The FBI has noted that about a huge surge in the pandemic-related phishing tied to growth of remote work, right? So essentially, what phishing and social engineering is phishing is when you pretend to be a legitimate source and you reach out for information. So I've seen people actually fail this a lot. One of the really big ones is you might get a text message that has a link that might look really legitimate off by a character. You click on it, and it'll bring up to like a direct mimic of a known service. One of really big one is like Office Word systems, right? So like your whole OneDrive, Microsoft email, or Outlook email, that whole like Office 365 system. It's a pretty big target because the second you give them their credentials, all they need to do is take that exact thing, pass it through. Even if, let's say, it asks for if you think about it, even if, let's say, it asks for a two-factor authentication, which we'll talk about later, but even if you have something like that, what they can do is they can just pass your data along and then like just show you what they what the legitimate site gave back and have you complete the whole entire authentication. So phishing is one of the things you really want to be aware of. This is why I always say stay aware, have situational awareness. That means like if something bugs you and doesn't seem right, it most likely there's something off, right? It never hurts to do more research. I have seen like government websites, or I've seen like websites, especially for like if your area has a public transportation system or transit system. Some of these websites are pretty poorly done, and like I double check and check again to make sure they're legit before I provide information from those. I'm going to skip that. So insider threat. So like we talked about, there's multiple different type of threat actors, right? So we have people that are, let's say, like on like a really big so you have people who are like, I forgot the term for it, but you have people who are generally like national level. I forgot there's a terminology for it, but essentially it means like a national threat. Most systems are not going to state actors is the word, my apologies. So there are people such as state actors, which is legitimately people who are of countries where they have able to delegate resources. And most of the time, most cybersecurity system or infrastructure, especially public ones, like let's say at your university, cannot handle state actor attack. But there's also generally no reason for state actor to attack a public university because the stakes aren't high enough. Then you have things that are like individual actors. You have hacktivist groups, right? So you have people who do hacking for a living. You have things like script kiddies, which are just people who like look online for malicious script malware and just like send it to people and hope they run it, right? So you have different levels of threat. One of the really key ones is insider threat. Insider threat essentially is anyone who already has access into the system, which allows them to move around a lot more easily, right? So if I am supposed to be in the system, I have credentials. When I do something off, it's less easy detectable because I'm not an intruder from outside trying to get in. So for my BMs, it's current or former employers, business partners, contractor, or anyone who has access to systems or networks in the past can be considered as insider threat, right? Because they can abuse their access permissions inside threat can also be invisible, and traditional security solutions like firewall and intrusion detection system do not work for insider threat because they're generally more for unauthenticated people or external threat. Also, I just read this comment, but that's pretty funny. Yeah, if you actually work at a company in the future, this happens a lot. They do generally cyber security or phishing exercises where it's really important because people who are generally like, let's say your upper management levels, like your VPs, your president, your CEOs, or your C-suite, might not have the best cybersecurity awareness. So like a lot of companies generally run phishing campaigns. So that's a pretty good skill check. We're gonna skip that. So really quick, another really common thing you hear, especially being over the internet and with majority of your life happening over the internet, is known as a distributed denial of service attack, with DDoS. It is essentially an attack to attempt to crash a server by flooding it with traffic, right? So it's like, if you think about it, the internet essentially is a lot of pipes, right? And each pipe connecting to the system can only carry so much on it, right? So if you put so much load over a pipe that's not supposed to hold that much, you can cause the system to go down because it's just too much traffic, your data, because traffic has to be processed, right? It's not like it just goes through. It has to be processed. So this is when essentially you overload a system. Around persistent threat, or APTs, are generally an intruder or group of intruder that's known. And they have generally like, like a serial killer has like, what we call it, like their like signature mark, where like how they generally do things. This is what general APT is at, right? So you might have certain code sections that are really attributed to a APT, and they are generally leave systems in network intact, and they do generally spy business. And for example, the SolarWinds breach of the US government system is an example of APT, advanced persistent threat, where they stay within the system and they can span business activities, systems data, etc. I'm just gonna blow through some of this last fun thing. Okay, so man-in-the-middle attack essentially is where you just eavesdrop. Essentially, is you sit between two, let's say a user, and you're in the man-in-the-middle. You sit between the user and like an actual service, and you are trying to collect information from it. For example, is the Wi-Fi network, as mentioned in the slide. Or for example, I could create a fake website that looks like a real one. You put information in, I communicate with the real service, and I like return it, and I can gain access to things. Ethical issues. Okay, this is I think a bit more fun. So we're going to discuss some really cool ethical issues. Please chime in the chat. It's a lot funner if this is a discussion. So this is a few ones that I have talked to in a more classroom settings and ethical class and like just cool things within hacking. So the ethics we're going to discuss is hacking back, vulnerability disclosure, gray hat hacking, rights to be forgotten, and the FBI Apple encryption dispute. So the first thing when we talk about ethics is hacking back, right? So you might ask, what is hacking back? Hacking back is essentially, let's say I attack you. Should you have the right to attack back or try to get back at the system, right? So should victims of a cyber attack be allowed to hack back? So like that could be example, you can try to go back and retrieve or delete the data that was stolen by the attacker. You can try to, let's say, maybe monitor or figure out where the attacker lives, or you can try to maybe destroy the attacker system or do harm to attacker system. Really maybe good example is if you watch YouTube, there's been a lot of like scam call center, right? So like, let's say it's like, if they hack your computer, should you be allowed to attack them back? What are the thoughts? Should an individual be able to hack back if they're a victim of a cyber attack? What do people think? I'm gonna take a drink. You said yes. Okay. Okay. So that's actually get your stuff back. I love these chats. Like, yes, get your stuff back. Yeah. It says no, because attacker is probably not spoofing the origin. So ethically, it becomes a conundrum, right? It's like if someone attack you, should be attacked back. This is a lot of you could attribute this to a lot of cases in history, such as like self-defense and stuff like that, right? So the thing with that is actually you're not allowed to, because essentially it's for example, if you hack in the back, you're committing the same crime. And it's actually really interesting of a thing. There's actually a piece of legislation known as the Active Cyber Defense Certainty Act. So the point of this act, it's actually been introduced for a while. There's actually you're currently not allowed to hack back. It's legal to technically hack back because you're also attacking a cyber system. But there has been legislation and talks that would grant, let's say, entities the legal authority to venture outside their own networks to establish distribution. So essentially figure out the natural cause, the nature of the cause or the source of attack, to disrupt cyber attacks without damaging the other computer system. The key here is without damaging the system, right? So if they're attacking you, you can try to kick them off your system. You can't attack back. You can attack back, delete their system instead. You can try to retrieve and destroy any stolen files during the course of an attack. You can monitor the behavior of attacker. You can use beaconing technology to help figure out where they're located at, right? So this is what legislation like the Active Cyber Defense Certainty Act try to accomplish. This is not into law. It has not been approved, but it's currently you're not allowed to. And there has been a lot of talks like if you shouldn't be able to. And it's really an interesting conversation, right? Because you would imagine if someone comes and steals something from you, you would be able to get it back in type of self-defense. But in actual reality is you're not allowed to as of right now. So the issue of so the issue of like something like this legislation would be like if I don't know if you ever heard of cybersecurity or cyber forensics or cybersecurity forensics, right? So like it's like people during cyber attack also leave breadcrumbs. It's like in a murder or like any crime, there is some sort of law or documentation if your system's set up remotely, all right. So doing courses like stuff like that, you might destroy stuff like that. You might prevent law enforcement or like cyber forensic specialists to be able to actually look at causes, do documentation, and commit crime. But note to self, right now it's a criminal. If someone attacks your system or attacks your computer, you're technically not allowed to attack them back. Cool. Let's talk ethics, vulnerability disclosure, right? So a really good scenario for like that would be like, okay, I discover that Google Chrome has a way that leaks your username and password for something you've been on, right? So let's say I go on Google Chrome and I can somehow I go into settings, I can somehow look at the memory of the application and pull out data from people who've been using on a previous computer or something. So like when white hat hackers are hackers that are allowed to work on the system and discover things like vulnerabilities within the system, and security researcher, and these are people who study the security of systems and test them and pen test. When they discover vulnerability, what responsibilities do they have, right? Should they let the public know? Should they let the company know? What order should they let people know? Well, what do we think, right? So I'm a researcher. I discovered that Google Chrome has a vulnerability that is really significant that allows other people to take control. So you know how, if you don't know, Google Chrome has this like remote access software that's built into it. I found that there's a vulnerability that can allow me to take over anyone's computer. What responsibility do I have then, right? You would imagine, like, do you let the public know so people can uninstall? Do you let the government entity know? Do you let other cyber security researchers know? Do you let the company who produced the software know? That has always been a huge question, is who is held responsible, and what do you have, right? Because like, for example, let's say option one, let's say I disclose the issue to the public, right? I tell everyone, hey, here's a problem. That causes additional problems, right? If I, let's say, tell everyone, yeah, Google Chrome has this issue, guess what? You're putting a spotlight on this issue, which means if you argue the public has a right to know, they definitely do. But if I've disclosed the issue directly to the public and they know about it, this opens up other attack vectors who might have not considered this avenue of attack. This opens people trying to break it, trying to reach out, trying to utilize this vulnerability for malicious purpose, right? You can also say, oh yeah, but people know about it, so they can just uninstall, where they can like be more careful about it, right? But most of the general population do not have that ability, right? This, if you disclose it to the issue to the public right away, it might force the vendor to address this issue, but it also causes the problem is you're also telling bad actor or malicious actor that, hey, this vulnerability exists. This is something you can use. This is something you can exploit. We have option 2, right? Which is like we can alert the vendor or whoever makes the software and be like, hey, there's an issue, you should fix it, right? There's also programs like bounty hunting or bug hunting that kind of fall under similar things where they're like providing a reward to encourage you to let them know. So like the issue with that is people think like, hey, yeah, I'm providing free services to these vendors. I get nothing out of it. Why should I do it? Is why like, is it ethical to demand let's say payment or let's say expect payment for something like that? Is why some vendors try to help mitigate this problem with things like bug bounty programs. But in my personal opinion, the responsibility to disclose, or it's not in my personal opinion, is I think the right thing to do is a compromise between the two we discussed, which is letting the public know and letting the vendor know, right? So we want to come to a compromise where we achieve the ability to let the public know that there's a threat. We also give vendors enough time to fix this threat, right? So like the threat doesn't just exist out in the wild and no one knows about it. So the compromise is generally you let the vendor know first. You tell them, hey, this is a threat, and I will give you 6 months or give them a period of time to fix this threat and to fix this vulnerability, and then I'm going to let the public know. And that's really key, right? Because that gives vendors time to patch it. So when it becomes public information, it's generally hopefully fixed by the time it becomes public. This is really important for security researchers that they don't just release things. Another key thing is it's called a CVE. So a CVE stands for, actually I check, I don't want to be wrong. There is an exact stand for. It essentially is a record. Every like vulnerability that is discovered publicly and released has CVE numbers assigned to it. It stands for common vulnerabilities and exposures. It's essentially a database of all known vulnerabilities. So like you can actually look it up, right? So you can look up Google Chrome CVEs. You can look up Microsoft CVEs and look at it details like researchers research into how the system is vulnerable, and you can look at things like that. But yeah, so that's generally the case. So that's like a pretty cool ethic thing. Let's see what else we have. So a really cool example of this is Google's Project Zero. So Project Zero is actually a full-time team dedicated to finding zero-day vulnerabilities. Zero-day vulnerability are essentially vulnerabilities that have not been found. Actually, I want to double check this. I'm pretty sure 0-day vulnerabilities. I'm pretty sure it's vulnerabilities that have not been. Let me double check this real quick. Yeah, so it's a vulnerability that has not been found by the actual developers. So, for example, Microsoft might have a zero-day vulnerability that they don't know about. And Google has actually a Project Zero team. Actually, a lot of companies are starting to model Google's Project Zero team, where it's vulnerabilities where they essentially go out and try to break systems. So there is to help with the patching process, or like to help with people fixing vulnerability and security. And it's a really good proof of concept, often used to help vendors and stuff like that. So like they disclose Windows vulnerability 2 days before a patch is released, so that like if you have a Windows computer, you know it's update and stuff like that. Actually, let me see. What else do I have? Next thing that we want to discuss is the type of hackers, right? So we mentioned that there is many types of hackers. So we have red hat, black hat. You might hear of these terminologies, right? So you have like black hat, white hat, gray hat. Red hat is actually a Linux operating system. But so right, well, there's also right. So your most common ones are like white hat hackers. So white hat hackers are generally security people who are built to go after and dig into systems, and like you could be a white hacker work for a company. They're generally people who are authorized to work on systems, to break into system, to help spot like security flaws for the government, business, and like everyday citizens. So for example, you can be hired as a white hat hacker for a company, and your job is to essentially target the system and learn more about them, right? And then like with that, you also have things like black hat hackers. Actually, pretty sure. Let me check something. Well, actually, which are people who are like the terminology, people who are willing to steal personal information for to sell and profit, right? So these are generally people who target, let's say, your school system. Like black hat hackers will be the ones that, let's say, put malware or ransomware into your systems to collect a profit from this type of stuff, such as cyber attacks, ransomware, spyware, etc. And they're looking to make money off of that. You know, white hat hackers are trying to prevent black hat hackers from succeeding. And the issue we have is we have things called gray hat hacking, which is the if you mix white and black, you get gray, right? So it's the in-between zone. So gray hat hacking is hackers essentially who have the technical skills and do it just as a hobby or for fun, right? So they might want to break into a system where just they're like people who like want to break something because they can, right? So they'll attempt to, let's say, look at a system and break into it, and just for fun sometimes. So is it ethical for, let's say, individual to gain access or try to break into a system they're not allowed to, right? So I don't know if you use so a lot of systems actually when you log into them, it'll be like unauthorized access is against the law and stuff like that. If they have like good intentions, right? So like you think I should put a hack into your computer if I have the good intention. I'm not trying to cause harm. I'm just trying to see if I can break into your computer. Should I have the rights and it's ethical for me to do that, right? Like you don't know I'm doing it. I just do it for fun. It's like I just attack your computer. I just want to see if your computer is good, is it safe. And that has always been like a pretty gray area in, let's say, hacking, right? So this is why generally you're told you're not supposed to touch system you're not authorized to, right? So like you can't. This is also why like it's really hard to run cybersecurity live stream during Global Hack Week, because like if I show you a skill and you technically use it and you don't use it on a system you're authorized to, so like a system you don't own or a system you got the authority to be working on, it technically is illegal and it's technically a cyber attack. And the ethics of gray hacking is it's a breach of confidentiality of these systems, right? Because like I didn't give you the authority or permission to break into my system, but you still do it. Let's see. So rights to be forgotten is our next generally pretty big ethical issue. It's around personal data, right? This actually impacts every one of us. If you don't know, a lot of organizations on the internet consistently collect your personal data, right? So like you've heard of like Facebook collecting your location data. You know how like Google Maps, where like Apple Maps collect your live location data to help with traffic, like stuff like that, right? So what are our requirements generally to talk about rights to that data, right? Because it's technically your data. We have seen a lot of actually progression within this field of like rights to be forgotten or how to handle data. For like, there's a lot of legislation that, let's say you get to decide, and they have to tell you what data you're collecting. They have to have privacy policy. They have to tell you what cookies they collect or what they're collecting off their cookie. What data do they collect? And like some places even give the right for you to actually have your data deleted, right? I can go to you like to use Discord, and I think since Emily uses Discord, you can tell Discord I want to delete all my private data. And there's like regulations around it, right? So like some applications won't work without data, and it's about removing personal identifiable data out of it. So right, it's about cleaning the data. So like you might have the numbers to produce what you need, but it doesn't associate to the person anymore. But so there's a lot of thing called GDPR, which is General Data Protection Regulation. The GDPR is like a legal framework that provides guidelines and collections and processing of information for user, and let's say this is specifically EU because they actually passed legislation. There's been many attempts to pass a similar one here in the United States, but like if you live in Europe, you have the GDPR, which regulates and protects you, and it's a legislative body. It have rules such as like users must be notified of what data sites collect from them. Users must agree to the website collecting cookie and other information before they can proceed, right? So if you notice nowadays, if you go to a lot of websites, you get this cookie pop-up, be like, hey, agree with this or not. Especially websites that are global, that are meant to reach more than one audience because they want to be able to operate in, let's say, the European Union space, which has these legislation, which means they can get fined for it. They can be taken to court for it if they don't follow these legislation. Is why like you don't want to actually just click OK if something pops up. If you actually pop up, I generally take a second to read the cookies and see what they're collecting, right? And some of them are optional. I turn off everything that's optional. I only leave what's required if I'm trying to use it, right? And like it also requires sites to notify users if their personal information is breached, right? So can you imagine? It's like if you, let's say, this is a hypothetical, probably happens before, but let's say Discord as a company, well, let's leave something else. That's pretty big out here. Everyone knows, like, let's say Steam, right? Does people know what Steam is? It's like the gaming platform, right? It's like the online game shop. So let's say they get breached. If there's no regulation that says they must tell the customer they get breached, right? You don't want it. It's generally not great business practice to go around telling people, hey, yeah, by the way, our systems got hacked and they took all your information, including your credit card information, your address, your billing address, like your IP address. They know your name and all this information about you. And that can lead to like identity theft and other things that has real consequences in the real world. So things like GDPR requires sites and things like if they get hacked to notify people and stuff like that. That's pretty cool. It also requires things such as like personal identifiable information or PII of customers and stuff to be like hidden. So to be disassociated with the actual data, right? So if let's say I'm collecting data, so like let's say on this stream, if you're watching on Twitch, YouTube, or whatever, right? They're collecting, let's say, statistics on who's watching. There might be rules that like you can keep like the demographic where they're watching, the location IP address they're coming from, but you can't associate with the actual person. And then another thing with like GDPR is like it allows people to request personal information with data. You can request a copy of it to see what data they have on you, as well as how to delete it, right? So that's like super duper cool because it gives you the power to do what you with your data. So actually there is one state that has something really similar to GDPR, which is California, because they adopted something, because there's a lot of tech companies there like I think it's CALOPPA. And there's many other places trying to follow through with this, right? It's protecting people's private information and giving you the right to do with them. Discord is actually a great one. You can legit request Discord to send you, they will send you all the data they have on you. And you can also request them to delete it. Companies try to make it hard to do it sometimes, but yeah. So the right to be forgotten is all to do with personal identifiable data. So cool. So this is actually a really interesting one. I don't know if you ever heard of the FBI Apple encryption dispute. So essentially, in February 2016, the FBI wanted Apple to unlock an iPhone 5C that belonged to a terrorist involved in a mass shooting. So the file, if you don't know, one of Apple's main selling point is privacy. It's one of the biggest selling point for Apple system. It's privacy. And the system is encrypted with AES 256-bit American encryption standard, right? So it's a pretty decently encrypted system. It takes time and effort to decrypt, and there are information they needed right away, right? It's time sensitive. Should law enforcement be able to get Apple to decrypt your device? So specifically, Apple was asking to create an electronically signed new software that will enable the FBI to unlock the phone, any phone, right? So the subject will only have to load it into the device and they'll get access, right? So should law enforcement be able to do something like that? And what happened in that outcome was that the iPhone was protected with like a 4-digit PIN, and it would erase the data after 10 incorrect logins, right? So like some phones you can enable that, right? You can do it on your own phone. Most phones, I personally don't like, because sometimes you can like accidentally press it and you can delete your phone. So essentially, that family had so much time and so many attempts. They can't even just keep trying. They only have 10 attempts. And Apple as a company refused to create the software for the FBI. and said, no, we're not doing it. That was like, because one of their basic selling point is privacy. So they're like, they're not going to do it. So the government actually found a third party, which actually end up unlocking the phone and decrypting it. But the thing becomes is the ethical issue that comes around cybersecurity is, should the FBI or any legal authority be able to request a manufacturer to install backdoors or other ways to decrypt systems you bought, right? It's like, and it has to do with national security. It's like, you know how like it has to deal with like rights as well and stuff like that. So Apple argued that creating a backdoor into a phone would be a great security risk to their customers. And it's not a great thing, right? It's like, if you know that, it's like it's saying if a lock company who made your lock also kept on file which lock and which key it is and kept your address on file, and if any law enforcement goes up to them and be like, hey, I get the key for this house because I want to search it. Well, there's a lot of legislation around it, but remember, this is in the cyberspace, which legislation is generally pretty behind as time develop, and technology is one of these big sectors where legislation falls behind really quick. And Apple, this is the first time it ever happened. So like Apple also was like, hey, no one ever asked for this. And should there, how much of a trade-off can there be between such thing as privacy and security, right? So national security was at risk, but you're invading someone's privacy. And what is the proper thing to do? And another actually really big one recently is, I don't know if you heard of Apple. There was talk of Apple using algorithm scanning or encryption to get key identifier to scan pictures on iPhones, right? So like, you know how like iCloud and like Apple products have like iCloud, and there's like a picture gallery, is like using a proprietary algorithm to scan through all those pictures and create tags for it, right? So they can identify, let's say, illegal picture you have. And this generally has to do with picture of illegal content that you're not supposed to have. And it's like, should Apple be able to do that, right? You bought the phone. It's your privacy to maintain. And there was actually a lot of fight back from customers of Apple, because one of their selling point is like privacy. But yeah, it was a pretty big deal. I don't know how anyone feel about it. Anyone can feel free to talk about your thoughts. Do you think anyone should manufacture these, should be installing backdoors into your computers or into your laptop? And if anyone from like any agency asks like, hey, I want to see this phone, unlock it for me, should they be able to? It's a lot. It's one of the few of the most interesting ethical questions within cybersecurity, and there's a lot of them. Okay, so we're going to go over some actual cybersecurity basics. So yeah, I agree with the no way part. But I would say no. I get where they are coming from, but it's a huge ethical issue. It is, right? It's like the same ethical question you get asked in every university or college of a class. If there is a train coming two ways and you can kill off people, do you do that, right? It's like huge ethical question. Oh, and if you think ethics and cybersecurity is bad, ethics and AI machine learning is a whole nother ball form. It's super fun, actually. I love ethics as a general concept. Okay, so we're gonna go over a few cool, really basics that you should really know if you want to get into the security field. One, security objective. It's known as the CIA triad. That stands for the three basic key objective in computer security. One is confidentiality, two is integrity, and three is availability. And we're gonna go over each one of those and understand what they are. So confidentiality is essentially data is not available to people who shouldn't have access to the system, right? So it's like you and me should not be able to go to let's say Microsoft and be able to look at user information or look at other people's account, right? Because we're not authorized to do it. We're not authorized to access the system. We don't work for Microsoft. So that's a really key thing. It's confidentiality. So users should also have control over what information they provide and what they can see. So one of the keyest thing in computer security is confidentiality. Is that needs to be maintained, right? Knowing who only people who should have access has access to the system. Another really key thing is called integrity. Integrity is essentially means that the single source of truth that you're getting is accurate and complete without any tampering, right? So the system is performed unimpeded by any outside factors. So that means like if I request information from an API, I need to be able to trust that this API is giving me the information as truthfully as it can, right? It's like me asking a friend for it's like you asking Google for information or question, right? You have a lot. The integrity is not great on some of those answers. So another thing in security is like making sure no one or any threat actors can tamper with the information you're trying to carry across, right? So confidentiality is maintaining so no one who's not supposed to be on the system can get on the system, and only people who are authorized to be on the system can get on the system. Integrity is that any information that I get from the system is true. No one has messed with it. No one has tampered with it. No one has changed it. Availability is when to make sure the system and information is always online and kept functional and correct, right? So these three together makes the CIA triad. So that means the system is for sure only allowing people who are supposed to have access to it. It ensures that anything on that system is true. No one has messed with it, tampered with it. Everything is your source of truth, and that it's always available when it needs to be. Those are the three key part of the CIA triad. And then as we developed and gone through security and things, we have always grown to it, right? One of the things we've grown to it is we added two more branches of it. So we went from CIA to the CINA. It added two components. One is called, I cannot read that word, by the way. So it's non-repudiation, which essentially means that a user can't deny their involvement in sending or receiving data, right? So there's a way of doing that is having logs, right? So if you having good logs where like I can't lie and say I didn't do it. So having systems in place that will keep track of everyone's action. And like you know how like when you edit, like say a Google like a document and like you have metadata, but metadata can be technically edited, right? It's having good documentation that let's say if I am on a server and that everything I change is logged and it can be directly identified to me, right? This is like one of the key things around this is like don't have general accounts, right? Don't have accounts you share with people, right? Because then you can't tell who did it. If you have a system or server that generally only has one admin account, everyone's on the admin account, and we're all admins, we're all using one account, we never know who actually did what. So this is making sure that a user can't say, I didn't do it, where it's that person who did it. So now we have confidentiality, where that we're sure only people who should have access have access. We have integrity, that everything we get out of the system is true. No one has tampered with availability. We can always access the system. We have non-repudiation, which is we know whatever action has been done on the system, we know who's done it, and no one they can't say they didn't do it because there's either a log or something that supports that, right? That's authentication, which is essentially making sure a user is who they are and before granting them anything into the system. That includes accessing data, any privileges in the system, right? So putting this all together will grant you a system that have only people who are supposed to be on it can get on it. Only every data on there has been protected and that no, it's correct and true. You have availability. You can always get onto that data. You can always tell who has done what on that servers. You can always, and that no data is ever given to anyone that has not been checked, verified that they are who they are, right? So like I can come in and say I'm the admin and get information. I have to be checked through either passwords and security measure that will for sure identify that I am I. Okay, cool. So we're gonna go over a few actual examples of that, right? So like accountability is really key in an imperfect world. So like there are security protocols and system will fail and will be breached because we're always attacking it, and like there's actually no such thing as a flawless system. There's no such thing because you can always use social engineering. You can use a lot of the tools and techniques we discussed today to attack any system. So there's no such thing as flawless system. Like you should never think your system is flawless. You should always be looking at your system going, how can people break in, right? Example is your personal computer, right? You will never hold up to like a threat actor. You will never hold up to, let's say, a state actor, right? Because like one, you're not gonna get attacked by it, but like most people, if hopefully they at least have like some sort of antivirus, properly configured firewall settings and stuff like that to protect yourself. Most time people don't even do that, right? So there's no such thing as a perfect system, and we need to keep log and be able to trace things within the system, right? So documentation is really key within objective of CIANA. So like you have to be able to not only accredit things to which user's account, but also be able to look at everything that occurs on the system. Is why, like, I know a lot of people hate this, but for example, like during, let's say, Google document, right? If you're working on a school project, that it tells you exactly which user added what line, removed what line. There's a history, right? It's so you can hold people accountable. So some CINA examples, let's go back to the slides for confidentiality. So like in December of 2013, a national retailer Target reported that the theft of records of over 40 million credit and debit cards used at stores. Not longer after the breach, the card data was being sold at underground forms to thieves. The confidentiality of the credit card data was not preserved, right? So this happens actually a lot, is when systems get hacked or targeted and they collect data, and they fail at doing one of the key part of the CIA triad, confidentiality. It gets sold underground. If you do not know, there is multiple layers of the internet, and in the dark web, there's a lot of services that sell people's credit cards, social security number, credentials to company accounts, and stuff like that to help attackers. And a lot of the deals are generally done in cryptocurrency again because it's untraceable. And I'm not going to go over actually example of everything. Let's go over more topics that are relatable, because we've been over a lot of the things. So let's do questions real quick, and then I'm going to go back and go over some more personal security that you can apply to your daily life today. But any questions of what we discussed so far? I know it's really like a lecture style, but cybersecurity is, not going to lie, it's technical, but cybersecurity is also a really theoretical field. That's a really procedural, policy, processes type of field. So there was a lot of lecture style things. I wish it was a bit more interactive. But yeah, any questions from the audience? I'll take that as a no. Feel free to ask any questions as we go along. But now let's get to the fun part. So what can you do to protect yourself? And what are some really easy security concepts you can do in your day-to-day life? Person security. So password managers, antivirus, sandbox, situation awareness. Let's go over some of this. So password manager is a really good one. It's a pretty actually key important one. If you do not know what a password manager is, it's essentially a piece of software that encrypts the data it has. And what it does is you remember one long password to the actual password manager, and the password manager stores security, hopefully securely, all your login information, so you can make them as complex as they need to be security, right? So actually, let me see if I can password string testing tool, or like give me 1 second. I think it's like, is it this? Does this work? Okay, cool. This is great. Actually, it's double great because this is something I think is of a great resource. Oops. Okay. Well, you got my ad block thing. Okay. So we're actually gonna go to. I use ad block. Oops. We're gonna do this for a second. Then I'm going to modify something real quick. This is also good security practice, not releasing everything to everyone. There we go. Okay, cool. So there we go. You can see my background. So like Bitwarden is actually one of my favorite password security manager. It's open source. It is free to use. It's great. So for example, a lot of people, because passwords are just actually a really key thing that people don't remember really, right? So like if a password such as like this password, a hacker can crack it in less than a second. Super weak, right? And for example, if something else like one of you like your dumb stuff like stuff like that, or like Kev's amazing day. Well, Kev's Kev is the best, right? You can still crack it in like 11 days and so on and so forth. But if I have things Yo, I know, right? I agree. Bitwarden's my favorite thing. But if I have a password that's like this, that's like, oops, I definitely did not mean to open multiple things. Oops. Let's see. Close that back out. Go back to presentation. I just deleted myself. Let's see. Okay, cool. You should be able to see this again. Okay, cool. I did not mean to do that. Okay, cool. So back to the password string, right? So like having a password that's like all generated with numbers and strong keys and whatever, actually makes it really hard to crack. And it's really hard to remember something like that, right? Because it has no meaning or anything. But if I do something like just using something like a password or like admin password or like even multiple words, right? You can see some of them grow in strength, but they're still crackable in doable time, right? 11 days is not that long. I can leave a system to crack your password and just let it run. So like 11 days is not that long. And that being said, it's why something like a password manager is really important. You just have to remember a really strong long password, which can be like, actually I should not be making a password on stream, but like Kev is a major league hacking coach, right? Like this takes forever to crack already, but you remember one password, and then from there you just have it remember and memorize random password of like this that it'll take centuries to crack and no one ever crack, right? And the thing is like this also prevents you from one of the biggest mistakes people always make is having one password for everything. This you just remember one password, that's the only password you got to remember, and then your password manager will automatically plug in the rest of the information for you. Okay, cool. So back to personal security. We have things like antivirus. There's a lot of antivirus out there. Every time I try to log in, this is why you have a password manager, right? You just have to remember one password and then you just keep it on. I used to do this as well. Is I come up with, let's say, algorithmic way to design a password where I come up with a few passwords and I just recycle them through and just reset them over and over again. And it becomes a problem because like I'm sitting there every time I access something, I forget the password, I'm just resetting it, which is great. And or you can just have a password manager that kind of does it for you. It's actually a really amazing tool. So let's go over antivirus. So if you don't know what antivirus is, it's really called like anti-malware or something. So antivirus is essentially a malware application that detects malware in your computer and protects it, right? So most antivirus or anti-malware programs come with like a firewall, a scanner to scan threats, a live scanner that like as you are doing things and download things, it scans it. It might also watch your network connection, other things, right? You have big names in this realm, such as like Avast, AVG, Malwarebytes, Windows Defender. I think they call it Windows Security now. Windows Security, right? On most Windows computer, if you have Windows ship with Windows Security, you always buy additional antivirus or anti-malware applications on top of that. It's just a way to protect your system. They also generally come with firewall. Hey, welcome to the stream. Come with firewall, which protects your network connections and stuff like that. How good is Windows Security? It's gotten better. Any suggestion from real quick? So Windows Security has gotten better by a lot. It actually has decent. So what I actually do is, if you don't know this, is each malware or antivirus keeps their way of identifying malware secret, right? So it's because like if everyone knows, and if I'm an antivirus developing company, if I tell people how I identify this malware, the people who write the malware can just find a way around it, right? And also it also gives competitor ways to do the same exact thing. So for that reason, everyone's security with their code with the database to identify malware is different, or to identify a threat is different. So like what I do is I have antivirus separately. And then you can turn on, so when Windows Security runs periodically, like every once a month or every couple of months, to run its own database on the same entire thing, right? Because you can come up with different results. Well, I'll show you a really good example actually. I'm actually gonna do this real quick and show you a really good example. Give me 1 second. So, I will actually do this real quick. I'm gonna grab a random file and then upload like 1 second. I'm just gonna. I will actually do this. Okay, cool. So, I want to know about salting. We can go over salting. It's a pretty good security concept too. Okay, so cool. So this is something. It's an application. Oh, you can't see my screen. There we go. So this is an application that it runs any app file you upload through multiple security routes. This is what we use in like malware analysis, security analysis, right? So this application just ran it through multiple security vendors analysis because each of them have different databases, which they can come up with different results. So for example, you have some of these I don't even know. So Bitdefender is a really big company too. You have like some of these I actually don't know, but like the point of running like McAfee, point of running it through all these is that each of these have different databases which have different things, right? So I uploaded actually the KeyPass setup.exe, which is a known if before. So like this is a known perfectly fine thing, and it's like there's different ways of identifying malware, right? So like I would go a lot into this, but it's not the stream for that. But essentially, the key point what I'm trying to point out here is like there's so many malware scanners out there, and like you have Microsoft, this is your Windows one, you have Palo Alto Networks, and there's so much anti-malware, antivirus scanners that they provide different results. So it's best. How good is Windows security? It's better than before for sure. They have worked on it, improved tremendously. And I would always use that as a secondary scan for your system because they can tend to detect something that your main antivirus doesn't. Any suggestion for Mac OS? The suggestion for Mac OS is that you have a bit less to worry about. And then I'm going to do this again real quick. And I will tell you exactly why. So, OS. And then we'll get to this. Let me see if I can find something live. Give me like 1 second. Operating systems. I'm trying to find a liver DDOS. 2022. Oh, this is not the data I'm looking for. Give me 1 second. Oh, is this it? Is this it? That's not what I'm looking for. Is this it? Is this it? Yeah, I think I might have found it. Give me like 1 second. Let me just make sure this is it. Operating system. Systems 2022. Is this it? I just want to find a more up-to-date one. Just like give me a 2022. This website is like jacked up. You can't see my screen, but this website is like actually like jacked up. Actually, let me just do this. What am I doing this? I should do operating. Market share. Let's see. I would imagine this is easy to find. I don't know if I'm just being really stupid right now because I can't find data on this. Let's see. I can't find recent enough data on this. Okay. Well, this is good enough. We're gonna call this good enough. But let me do this. Let me put this back up. So this is not recent, but it's just a good example of what I'm about to point out. Which is, I can see all these gives a really similar result to this. As you can see, this is like, oh, I should share my screen, right? This is actually like the deviation of operating system market share. So this is the operating systems that are out in the world, right? Out in the public. So you can see that Windows make up majority of public operating system, where Mac OS and like iOS makes up a lot less of this market share, which essentially means if I'm a threat actor and I want to be able to do as much damage as I can, these are generally malware. Because remember, malware is written specifically for generally an operating system, because there's certain things you have to interact with. So the type of operating system matters. So if I'm a malware or threat actor, I should kind of zoom in. I don't think so. But essentially, why you don't see generally you don't see antiviruses from Mac or Apple operating system is because they take only a small part of the market share. That most of the time it's not worth it, and also a lot of threat actors are targeting bigger companies, which makes it not worth developing malware or malicious code for things that touch a lot less of thing, right? You think about most of your schools, most of your workplaces uses some sort of Windows ecosystem. And a lot of things, a lot of servers, right? So like big company server that holds data uses Windows or Microsoft operating system, and that makes it such a more valuable target than something like writing malicious code for Mac OS. And also on top of that, Mac OS has a really locked down their operating system, right? Have you ever seen anyone try to download a Mac OS like operating system or like virtualize it? It's really hard because they really keep their operating system a lot locked down. It's like Windows, you can find binary files of it, you can like decompile it, you can do all sort of stuff with it. But like Mac is, they have a really better hold on their security, and because of like how they approach that type of stuff, it allows them to do stuff like that around privacy. So like that's why you don't see really generally malware written for one Mac, because it's not the right target audience, because you spend all this time writing malware and be able to attack almost no one. Yeah, because it's really hard. It's close to not possible to find a way to emulate a Mac. And then on top of it, even if it is, there's sometimes hardware complexities and stuff like that. It's like really hard to operate. Yeah, no. And then let's see, sorry. I want to know about salting. Salting is just a concept of where you add additional things to, it's not, you don't do it, but it's how like systems handle passwords, right? So it adds a level of complexity. So I would, let's say, salt a password, which was let's say I add a bit more to it. So the user provides something, I add a bit more to it, and then it goes through like an encryption process. We're doing encryption one day. We're going to do encryptions. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do symmetric and asymmetric encryptions one day for another global hackweek. It's definitely not a beginner concept. But something all you know about salting is when a system adds a bit more to your password to make it a bit more secure. That's really what salting is. Also, what is a hacker roadmap? Hope no one has asked this before. A hacker roadmap is don't be a hacker, be a cybersecurity researcher or analyst. That's the hacker roadmap. Next thing is we're going to cover, actually, going back to our slide, is sandbox. If you don't know what a sandbox is essentially a mock system that will allow you to do whatever you want, right? So one of the biggest things in personal security and also even cybersecurity is exploring. So you can do this through like VMs, or like even a lot of antivirus or anti-malware system come with the ability to create a sandbox where you can like run applications to make sure they're secure. You can go to websites to make sure that you don't get malware and viruses. It's just a just know if you are ever suspicious of something, see if you can get a sandbox environment up and test it. This is a lot less. This is more so just be aware and just have decent situation awareness. I kind of talked about this already. Is like if something's off, do some digging. It's always better to do some digging and figure out what was off than get yourself hacked or something. I think that's most of the concept I want to cover today in terms of a lot of basic things. I will answer any personal security questions about my own, what I do, and any security of my own, or anything in general what we talked about. So I'm going to back the question slide, and then yeah. Oh, does it? Actually, I don't know about. Let's see. Windows 10 sandbox environment. Let's see. They have Windows Sandbox. Yeah, but it's in the pro. This is what I was afraid of. It's in the pro and enterprise version way. So it's like, yeah, that was what I was afraid of. I didn't, because most people don't have Windows Pro or Enterprise Edition on their home computer. But yeah, it is a feature. Windows Sandbox is on Pro. And what is it, by the way? Windows Sandbox is essentially just an environment where you can test around, mess around, that like will get rid of itself. So like you can run malicious stuff or things that you might suspect to be malicious and see how it plays out. And then once you are done with the sandbox, it just scraps it. Essentially, it's like a temporary environment you set up and you do something in it, and then you just get rid of it. It's like a test tube essentially. It's like you put everything in the test tube. After you're done, you can put out the content and you get a fresh test tube. It's kind of like a virtual machine. It's a lot more lightweight than a virtual machine. Virtual machine virtualizes the whole entire operating system, right? Including like its kernel, its everything. A thing. Does it come with all Windows 11? Windows Sandbox. Let me see. This is great. I would love to know if it comes with all Windows 11. Oh, it does. Well, no, it says it's not supported on home. If you look at the prerequisite of the article, yeah, it's not on home still. So like it is on Windows 11, but I just don't think it's on the home edition, which generally what ship with your regular computer. Is it in Chrome too? It depends. So there's different ways of setting up Sandbox. There might be Sandbox that are just web browser based. Can you give a cybersecurity researcher a roadmap for someone who knows web dev and some Android dev? Yeah, they do want extra money. Give a cybersecurity research roadmap for someone who just knows. I mean, it's never too late to switch. I've seen people switch way more over different fields, so it's definitely never too late if you're interested in switching. What I would say is start with there are some entry level things in terms of like certification stuff that has pretty good content. But I would say a lot of cybersecurity is being curious and like playing around with things. So like if you're a web dev, there's a lot of web things that are like cybersecurity related, right? So there's like you look into things. Why it's slipping my brain? Like SQL injection. Look at like concepts are web related. If you're a web dev already, they make more sense to you already. And then like try to explore and learn about it, right? So one of the pretty good thing is like the sneak challenge technically goes over a type of SQL injection. I think it does, right? Let me think. The sneak one, does it? Yeah, it goes through an SQL injection that uses JSON prototype pollution. So it's like looking into things. There's a lot of web concepts that are usable within cybersecurity, and generally just being. Oh, well, look at that. There you go. Roadmap.sh has a cybersecurity roadmap. Work in progress. Thank you, Wei. They're great. But yeah, I would say just be curious, play around with a lot of things, and that's where I kind of got started in it. It's definitely, don't let people intimidate you out of it. If you're interested in it, it's a pretty fun field. Any other questions, comments, concerns? See, I am currently thinking about About how to explode. No, about I'm doing a threat assessment in my head about something that just occurred. What kind of internship would we apply for? Because they always want a degree for security ones. That's not necessarily true. I've seen a lot of entry level. So look for cyber analyst positions. There's actually a lot of entry level where like a cyber development program. I've seen a lot of them from like companies that don't require you to have a degree, or that like could require multiple years of experience. I've seen there's definitely ones out there. It's a bit harder generally because cybersecurity, as you can see, it touches a lot on a lot of computer concept or computer science concept. So like experience will make you from a regular analyst to a really great one. Yeah, things like Hack the Box. There's websites out there that's kind of like break into a system. Hack the Box is a really big one. I do have a list of resources, but on the top of my head, Hack the Box. Do CTS, right? They train your skill in using different kind of tools and concepts. So like capture the flag challenges. If you can get yourself in any red team, blue team exercise, are great. But Hack the Box, you can check that out. Can AI hack? I mean, this is we can get into a long debate. But AI, right? It's still a computer following a set number of procedure and rules, right? It's a computer that handles a lot more complex procedure and rules, right? That's what essentially AI is, right? There's still like logic behind AI, or there should be. AI should not be a black box generally. There should be a lot of logic behind AI. You should be able to generally graph out a whole tree of how AI is processing data. And remember, we talked about cybersecurity is a lot about procedural things, right? So like if you teach the AI all the techniques, AI can technically replicate all those techniques and apply them. So I would say AI could hack on a theoretical level. I don't know if there's anything out there for it. We might know, but I don't know if there's anything out there for it. AI is used a lot in analyzing malware because it's used into, let's say, sorting or helping with identification of malware. But I don't know about AI built to break into systems. That's a great question. I might look into that one myself. Look at that. It's great. I'm grabbing resources. Actually, not long. I got into cybersecurity this year. Well, yes, I've done a lot of things adjacent to cybersecurity, but I really done cybersecurity this year. So not long. Yeah, super way. But yeah, it's definitely not been long. I've really done cybersecurity. It's really a dive this year. I've done a lot of malware analysis, so like breaking down and analyzing malware, and like a lot of reverse engineering, and done like research into reverse engineering buildings and like cyber physical systems and stuff. Um, but yeah, um, and a lot of that has like all occurred this year. I also have done red team, blue team exercises, captured the flags, and all that's been like this year. What made you interested in cybersec? What made me interested in cybersecurity is really the uniqueness in cybersecurity, right? So like in computer science, it's already a lot of like logical problems. Cybersecurity is like a really good mix of like analyzing things, right? So it's like in computer science, you kind of build things. Cybersecurity, like there's so many different fields you can do. Right? You can do pen testing, you can test system, you can build security systems, you can try to break into things. There's just so many things you can do. Yeah, like there's like cybersecurity is such a broad field, and there's so much you can do. If you're interested in like let's say breaking down systems, there's a job for you. If you're interested in building security first, there's a job for you. If you're interested in building software solutions in cybersecurity, if you're interested in building hardware solutions in cybersecurity, I just really like the investigative half detective, right? You can be like an analyst. You can be a cybersecurity forensic. It's a really good mix between like a system admin, a developer role, and like a detective type of thing. I don't know. It just really for me, it's I just really like the challenge and understanding some of the stuff. It's really cool. Yeah, that's great. I like these two comments combined. But I mean, web do cyber. Cyber's great. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. I really enjoy bringing people into the cyberspace. It's great. Okay. Any other questions, concerns I can address? Also, wait, can you DM me that link for that Twitter? I would like to take a look because I love stashing up on resources for things. Wait, if you can just DM me that, thank you. I would say cybersecurity, don't be scared to get in. Start anywhere small. There's a lot you can do within it, right? There's and like cybersecurity is adjacent to so many technical fields like operating system design, code design, code system, like so much more. We've shared it once in chat. I just can't copy and paste in this chat system. It's above. It's this one. I just don't want to type it out either. So I can't copy and paste in this chat system that we have. So thank you, Wei. I appreciate it. Oh, try Hack Me is a really good one. Hack the Box, those two I do know of. And there's actually other ones on this list. So, Pico CTF is a great one too. So there's three I know. It's great. Those are really good ones to get started with. And don't worry. You know what's the best thing in cybersecurity is that like if you get stuck somewhere, there's generally a write-up. They're called write-ups. So there's generally write-ups on how someone else approached it. And it's really good to like attempt something for a bit. If you fail it, it's okay. Look up a write-up for that concept or that challenge and then read about it and then learn. And then you keep going. You just build on your arsenal of tools. I'm still doing that building myself, right? It's like doing a lot of it. That's great. Look at that. People adding that these resources are great is amazing. And they're free. It's the best part. Free stuff, right? Yeah, we have gone to the degree where quietness is not bothering me. So welcome to streaming with a bit of music. So, I like this. I think this is actually a pretty. We have a set track of music we're allowed to play. I kind of do like this track. Let me know if the music's too loud. But yeah, any other questions? Any experience questions? Cybersecurity related? Anything? Anything you're curious about? Oh, I did not read this. Oh, well, that's good to know. Your situation awareness. Make sure you know what you're doing and getting into. Don't trust things. One of the biggest things, don't run random script. I know a lot of people like this. You just look up solution for something online and they're like, type XYZ, just copy and paste it. You do. Not the best idea. Try to understand what you're doing before you just copy and paste. Might be a silly question. Are there actual coding languages are common in this field? Yes. A lot of if you go into automation cybersecurity, which is automating some processes so they're all set up properly. Python's a really big one. You can learn how Splunk works, right? So like there's a lot of cybersecurity related coding language or adjacent field. Python, you can do lower level language in computers and cybersecurity, so like some C, C, so like really close to assembly. Know your assembly. That's really important. Take a lesson. I'm planning on teaching assembly one day as a global hack week stream. It was just too, I think it didn't fit the beginner theme as well. Assembly is not as easy to process, but we will probably do assembly on stream one day. That one I can definitely do. I love teaching assembly. But assembly is like the closest thing from just direct binary on hardware. So it's like that's how you sometimes have to analyze malware. So know C, Python for automation, C for analyzing malware, and assembly. Those are probably really three key languages within cybersecurity. Probably unrelated, but how do different people stream on the same account? Major League hacking. Yeah, God, assembly. Assembly is great. I love assembly. I'm a bit odd for that, but that's okay. I don't like writing assembly. I love reading assembly. There's a difference. I love like analyzing assembly. Writing assembly is a whole different ball. game. Like I've written a lot of assembly code. Would prefer not to, but also it's actually a service called StreamYard that allows multiple people to access one Twitch account. It's a secured solution to allow multiple of our coaches and full timers to stream. Yes, I've done this actually. You can ask GPT to write anything. I've asked GPT to write AI, which it told me it couldn't. Then I asked again nicely, and it wrote a skeleton of AI for me. Assembly is great. I love assembly. Maybe we'll do like a architectural stream one day. Yeah, it depends. Some people it's not for everyone, but it's definitely fun for some. I mean, if you don't know assembly, at least get to C. C is a good language to be able to read. When's my next stream? Great question. I actually um what is far web? Real quick. No clue. What is far web? I don't know what far web is. But what is my next stream? Oh, dark web. Okay. The dark web is like the internet is like a layer. It's like an onion, and like most people stay on the outside of the onion. What's funny is actually the onion is what is used. It will be on the same channel. But essentially, dark web is the deeper parts of the onion, where generally most people don't have like it's not you don't have access to, what a general web browser don't generally access, and you need special browser to access it. I highly don't recommend you can. I highly don't recommend you just go surfing around the dark web. You can get yourself into trouble, and not necessarily like if you don't know what you're doing. That is like because like there are people who are threat actors within the dark web. There's some dumb stuff. I don't know how true some of this. I've seen assassins for hire and stuff like that. I would just not touch it. I've been on the dark web. It's not. It's pretty cool of a place, but essentially it's like the unfiltered part of the internet. Essentially, what the dark web is. It's the innermost part of the internet. And you just need a bit of special things. If you want to look into it, you can look into it yourself. I just make sure you know what you're doing if you're going to look into that. My next stream is tomorrow. I think actually at like 1 p.m. after the check-in from Harry. And we're actually going to be doing some web dev with Wix. I'm actually doing a sponsored stream. Whoa! Sponsor stream. It's great. Will there be yes? Is there any challenges based on security? No, I want to. I'm gonna work on. Again, no promises it's even this year. But during one global hack week, I'm gonna try to convince it to be security themed, and I'm gonna try to convince trying to do a CTF for the whole stream. But right now there is not one. Also, I got shut down for this, but I'm gonna hope to bring this back. Is I was going to teach as part of security lockpicking. So this is a clear lock. It's great. It will definitely come back one day. I'm hoping to get this into a stream one day. But that was supposed to be a fun one this global hack week, but I was told no. So we'll bring it back one day. I'll try again next time. It's really cool. It's like learning a bit of lockpicking. Conceptually wise, you shouldn't apply it because it's illegal, but conceptual wise, it's good to know how to pick a lock. But yeah, sorry, I don't think this is a challenge this time. We'll get one next time. But yeah, lockpicking is always fun. Just remember, don't do crime. This includes cybersecurity, lockpicking, most things security related. Don't do crime. No malware. Don't write it. Well, I mean, write it. Don't deploy it. Questions, comments, concerns, chat. Welcome to the stream. You like this background? I was like, I could not stand just like no good background. So I was like, I just took this art I found somewhere, added some stuff to it, and then was like, added some more stars, and then like took the major key lagging logo and just plop out this like plop, and it goes there. I love it. I remember there was a channel that would pick random logs like that on YouTube. Yeah, yeah, it's great. I made it for my stream, so I don't have to. It's pretty cool. Like there's an owl on. Oh, I keep forgetting it's on this side. Look at that. I'm petting the owl. Oh, I don't. I have bad sense, but yeah, there's an owl right there. Yeah, don't do crime. You can learn all these skills. Just don't do crime. Use it for good. Cool. Well, I think we might call it a night for tonight. Any other final questions, parting words, amazing stuff? Also, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm on the Discord. Also, oh, I did promise the person who was interested. So this is a little about me. I don't use social media. It's a security thing. I really don't. I've been forced to have one. So those are technically my social media. I don't really use them. Feel free. Okay, cool. Amazing. Wonderful. And Wei, if you want this background, I can send you. I've streamed. I actually don't use OBS. I use something called Streamlab. It's like the streamer version of OBS. OBS is more like a recording software in general. Streamlab is like the stream version of OBS. It's built on OBS. It's like flavored OBS, and like that's why. I do have a LinkedIn. Um, I don't usually put my LinkedIn on this slide because it's like for everyone. But if you're interested in it, I will. I can. You can just look me up on LinkedIn. You can. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Kevin MLH coach, and you can probably find that just out. I mean, yeah, because those are people. It depends, right? So if you're talking about the company itself, that depends on the company's cybersecurity infrastructure and how they do that. But if you're talking about um, socially engineering, uh, like social media or people don't treat it as like a really important thing. So like they're pretty easier to like fish, right? It's like I send you something that looks like the Sunni login, right? Like, hey, you log in to see this picture, and then you log in. I got you. So it's about being socially aware of your situation around situational awareness. Really good. Yes, you can rewatch a stream. It's like a lecture though, but you can feel free to rewatch the stream. It will go live on I think YouTube. If I'm not wrong, I might be so wrong. Worst case, you can definitely get the VOD. Just watch the VOD after this ends. You get a VOD on Twitch. I don't know about YouTube. It might go on YouTube. I don't know if that's 100% sure. No, for sure, for sure. Yeah, you can actually. This is. I would actually just. I'm just gonna leave it on this slide. Here we go. And then, if you want, I did. Wait, I set it up correctly. Except for recently, I found some streams just don't show up on YouTube. I don't know if it's like a loading time, but like it should be on YouTube. So check the YouTube channel, check the VODs. It'll be on both most likely. See, Way's yelling at me again. I'm just kidding. But yeah, and then if you want to look me up on LinkedIn, it's just Kevin, and then if you do like Major League Hacking Coach or something, you'll probably find me. Cool. Well, we're gonna go back to the final slide, which I actually don't know if I showed yet. I always end my slides with Major League Hacking. If uh, I wouldn't say fan. I don't mind their music, but it's like I wouldn't categorize myself as a fan. If it plays, I don't mind it, but like I have a really pretty like all right music selection. I do like anything pop related of any type of country's pops, and then like I do piano and like piano classical and like violin, and then just pop in general. Spotify rap is pretty cool though. I really like that concept. Oh, I actually forgot. Wait, thanks for the reminder. I just like saw that again. Is tomorrow at 1 o'clock? I will be doing. Join me for the Wix sponsored building with Velo by Wix stream. It's going to be at 1 o'clock. It's going to be 1 to 2. And then following that, I will be doing Unix and Vim. So understanding your basics of a Unix and Vim machine, which is a lot of servers are either on Windows or on Linux of the flavor, which is Unix and Vim. So navigating and per moving around, knowing how to use that type of tools. That would be on Sunday. So there's a stream I'm going to be streaming again on Sunday for Unix and Vim. We'll learn more about them on Sunday at 10 to 12 again. Or you can catch me tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and we'll be doing a Wix stream, sponsored by Wix. Gonna do some Velo by Wix web development. It's gonna be easy. Anyone can get involved. Oh, and then yeah, there's one CTF challenge that I guess anyone can access. And then actually, that reminds me, I also need to call out my favorite streamer coming up after me tonight, which I gotta check. Okay, so right after me, we're gonna have Introduction to Electronics Part 1, starting in 10 minutes by Whitney. So make sure to stick around for that. It's gonna be a crazy, amazing, fun time. A lot of learning this week. So I'm actually gonna sign off, so maybe have some time, but make sure to stick around for that session. It's gonna be great. Introduction to Electronics, Part 1. Have a good night, everyone. Take care. Enjoy. Switch over to get some rest. Stick around for the next section of Go Hack with January. Oh, it uses minimal code. It works both ways. You can use code, or you can not. Tomorrow's project, we'll see how that goes. You can do either. But have a good night, everyone. Take care. Bye.